You differ from me in the 7 categories of otherness in that you are older than me and that you are a different religion than me. And you are, how old are you?
66.
Okay. And you, what's your actual, or your technical religion?
I'm a Lutheran.
In your life, have you seen many different uh, examples of people and discrimination towards things like uh, ethnicity or race, religion, sexuality, religious beliefs, age, anything like, or gender?
Yeah, I have. In my early life, I saw a lot of it. I grew up in St. Louis, and there were segregated schools. They redrew the boundaries of the school districts every summer to keep the blacks in the black schools and the whites in the white schools. And I think the entire time I was in high school, I only knew one or two black kids in my school, and they were gifted children. And it was because of the attitude of the school board there.
Mm-hmm.
That's changed a lot now, and
Right.
forced integration did a lot to change the schools, and I think it's a lot better now. Although that city was a holdout, and they fought the federal government for a long time on that. I think there was a lot of pains that took place because of busing kids, especially young kids, to make that become reality. But it has gotten a lot better, where nowadays the schools are totally integrated. I saw some of that in the military when I was in the service. Not blatantly, but I think it was more of a social thing where the races tended to stick together rather than integrate with each other socially.
Right.
On the job site in the military, everybody was forced to share their load, irregardless of their race. I also grew up, before I lived in St. Louis, when I was real small, I grew up on a very poor farm in the Ozarks of Missouri. And I was too young at the time to realize what being poor meant, because we were self-sufficient. We grew our food in a farm, and we had animals that we, lived off of and things. And as I grew older and become more affluent and educated myself, I look back at those days at how we were looked down on by society, I believe, because we were just poor dirt farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of it present, although I was too young to realize it. And I think a lot of that is still with us today. I think the people who barely eke out a living in their world are still struggling for their place in society.
So you're saying it's changed like a lot with different categories. Like it's changed a ton with race and ethnicity, but as for economic class, not so much.
I don't think so.
Yeah. All right.
There's more people living under bridges and asking for money on the sidewalks, on the corners of the intersections now than there was when I was little.
So being an adult, there's many more children than there are, or young people than there are adults in the world. However, the typical belief is that adults have more, not necessarily rights. Oh, okay, Dad. They have not necessarily more rights than young people, but more, they're treated better because of their age and that they can provide more of.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think when I was growing up, I was always taught to respect my elders and to, always help older people, what they're doing physically, carrying things or opening doors and all that. And that's the way I was just taught. And I think my generation still does that today. I mean, I'm at 66 years old, but I truly respect the 80-year-old person, and I'll do anything I can to help them if they're on a cane or, crossing the street or whatever. And I think that's true. Now, what I've learned about my age as I've gotten older is that it's less competitive. It's easier to be old than it was young. When I was young, everything was a competitive world where we had to, basically had to compete for our jobs and our salaries and our positions in life and anything else, And as I've gotten older, I've gotten more in a comfort zone where Maybe it's because of socioeconomics and making more money, or maybe it's just because I don't feel like fighting the battles anymore, or maybe my personality. But I think at my age now, I'm fairly comfortable in my skin without having to compete against other people for what I have and what I want.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of that confidence that I have as my age may reflect that I try to have more privilege than somebody that's younger than me. Although a lot of people I work with are in their 40s and 30s, and I don't think they believe that of me. At least I've never picked up on it. And I think that they have a true respect for somebody that's been through the ropes before them.
Right. All right. And lastly is, have you? So as I explained earlier, there's the whole ideal with for the dominant groups in certain categories.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain idealism of unearned advantages or things that you kind of like. For example, that you and I were born white, that we would have unearned advantages over someone who's African American. Not that we earned, just because we were born white.
I think there's truth to that too. I believe that being the dominant race, and by dominant I just mean numbers, there's more of us Caucasians than there are black people in the census every year. Being the dominant by numbers race, I think it's only natural that there's a certain amount of envy from other races. I think there's a certain amount of tendency for us to be perhaps more independent, if you will, of racism.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also natural for us to resist being earmarked as racist when, in fact, most people I know are not.
Yeah.
You know, we've fought to overcome it through the years. There's been a tremendous amount of anti-racism in the generations I've been alive, and I think that looking back on it, there's no reason why we should have guilt put on us for slavery any longer. I think that's silly. I think those of us who grew up in the stream that I grew up in of where my family came from and what they did, we've traced our heritage back, and we lost a lot of my ancestors in the Civil War fighting in blue uniforms to prevent slavery. Mm-hmm. And then to be turned around and say that, you know, I should feel some guilt for slavery, I don't see that. No one in my family, I think, has ever owned a slave. Mm-hmm. They've always fought against it for hundreds of years. Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's something that we get dubbed with that isn't fair. I also think that there's a lot of people that create a career out of racism. Mm-hmm. Probably on both Caucasian and on Negroes and other races too. Mm-hmm. But I don't appreciate them. Yeah. I don't appreciate them at all. I think they're actually hurting the causes that all the rest of us want to advance.
Definitely.
So.
What do you think about the unearned advantages for different categories like the ones we do? What do you think about unearned advantages for in terms of religion? Like, for example, you know, traveling and being, you know, a white Christian male versus, you know, someone else who would walk through wearing a turban.
I've not seen a lot of that in my life. I mean, I've traveled internationally some. I don't travel internationally a lot. But I haven't seen a lot of that. I know it's there. I don't know how bad it really is. What I have seen is that since 9/11 especially, there's a tendency to look over your shoulder if somebody is Arab, Muslim, wearing the robes and things, and you see them in a public place like in a mall or in a airport terminal. Uh-huh. I don't think that's necessarily bred into us. I think that's something that's a result of our surroundings in the last 13 years. Uh-huh. And I think that eventually as this struggle with radical Islam settles down, hopefully in your lifetime, that'll go away. Mm-hmm. I really believe that.
All right. Well, thank you very much.